Now on Thames Television, Chris Tarrant, your host for Cluedo.
You are invited to a murder. A stranger lies dead in Arlington Grange. There are 6 suspects, but which one is the killer? Could it be Mrs. Peacock, lady of the manor and beautiful society hostess? Perhaps Colonel Mustard, military hero and intimate family friend? Is Reverend Green a saint or sinner? Is it Professor Plum, a man with a degree of suspicion? Miss Scarlet, Mrs. Peacock's glamorous stepdaughter? Or Mrs. White, loyal housekeeper and devoted confidant? Your host for Cluedo, Chris Tarrant.
Hello there, welcome once again to Cluedo. There's been another murder at Arlington Grange. As usual, it's your chance to play along at home and pit your wits against the sharp intellects of tonight's guest detectives. Now, they are broadcaster and journalist Pamela Armstrong, writer, actor and star of Doctor at the Top, George Layton. Good luck. Good luck. And battling against them, children's TV presenter Gabby Roslin and veteran TV presenter Frank Boff. Thank you. Sorry about that. Frank's saying thank you for veteran. Right, now, once again, it's a process of elimination and deduction. We want to find out where the murder was committed. We want the precise location. We want to know what it was done with. And eventually we want to know who done it. But first of all, I can tell you it was done with one of these 6 weapons. But which one? Was it the kettle flex? Was it that candlestick? Was it the gun? Was it the antique knife? Was it that bronze statue? Or was it that poker? And I can also tell you it was done in one of these rooms. But which one? Was it the kitchen? Was it the study? Was it the dining room? Was it the drawing room? Was it the billiard room, or was it the library? Now, first of all, the evidence so far. Mrs. Peacock has decided to reinsure the contents of Arlington Grange following a spate of recent burglaries. George Biddle, an insurance assessor, has arrived from London. Now, he's an old friend of Colonel Mustard.
You have a beautiful home here, Mrs. Peacock. Really beautiful.
Thank you. Please, make yourselves comfortable.
Thanks.
So, I understand you were in the army together.
Best damn sergeant in my company. Then one day I get a phone call and find he's back in Civil Street. And he's a director of Cosmopolitan Insurance, no less.
I wasn't exactly a director then.
Well, no, but you are now. Mind you, the amount of business I've put his way, I'm not surprised.
Now, I expect you'd like to look over the house again, so why don't I just leave you to it and go and see Mrs. White about some tea?
Delightful.
That would be very nice, thank you.
Before you disappear, old chap, do you think you and I could have a quick word?
Yes. If you'd like to carry on, I'll join you in the drawing room.
Certainly, Mr. Biddle.
Now, it's a nice piece.
It's pretty lethal, I'd say. At least it's genuine. That's more than can be said for some of the things in here.
Really? Such as?
Well, take this bronze over here.
Tell me more.
Well, it looks very good, but when you touch it, it doesn't come alive. It's got no history. It's just dead.
I wonder if the delectable Mrs. Peacock intended to insure this as genuine.
Well, perhaps she didn't know.
Perhaps you ought to ask her.
Ah, here's the problem. A loose wire.
Oh, the Reverend Green will just have to lend us his. I'll go and ring him.
Why the panic, Mrs. White?
Oh, well, we've got these insurance people here, Professor, to revalue the paintings and that, and I think she feels it's not polite to keep them waiting with their tongues hanging out.
Insurance?
Well, what do you think?
I'm not sure. I'd have to check with the files. But if it is, what's it doing here?
Tell me, Mrs. White, how long have these rather handsome candle holders been in the family?
I really couldn't say.
No? Oh, never mind.
Mrs. White, where were you before you came here?
Neston House.
Neston House? That rings a bell for some reason. Oh well, never mind. These candlesticks, Mrs. White, they wouldn't have ever been kept in the church by any chance, would they?
The church? What would they be doing there?
Well, that's quite. Wait a minute, Neston House, of course. There was a rather unfortunate fire there, wasn't there?
Yes, of course I want to help, but you won't tell me why.
If you really loved me, you wouldn't ask. You'd just do it.
Do what?
Get rid of him. For me.
If you mean what I take you to mean, don't you think I deserve an explanation?
One kettle to the rescue.
Oh, thank you, Vicar.
What's the matter, Mrs. White?
He knows. I'm sure he knows. And he's going to tell Mrs. Peacock he won't insure her because she's got an arsonist in the house. And then what's going to become of me?
I don't understand. Who are you talking about?
That insurance bloke asking about the candlesticks. He's not bothered about the candlestick. That was just to fool me. Have the candlesticks ever been in the church, Mrs. White? What sort of a fool questions that?
This insurance chap, he wasn't with Cosmopolitan Comprehensive, was he?
That's the one.
We haven't been insured since my husband died.
Really? May one inquire why not?
There was a problem, Mr. Biddle. The previous company refused to honour my first husband's life policy.
Good Lord. Why was that?
It seems they weren't satisfied that the death was accidental.
But surely if the coroner's verdict was accidental, why didn't you sue?
I chose not to.
Rather than suffer the distress of the matter being reopened and investigated all over again, you mean?
Absolutely, Mr. Biddle. You appreciate my feelings.
Regrettably, Mrs. Peacock, we will be obliged to discover the exact grounds on which your husband's company decided to withhold payment.
Oh, dear. I've still forgotten the teapot. You see, that just shows you how much that man's upset me. Fancy forgetting the teapot of all things.
Shall I take the trays through to the library then? Would that be a help?
Oh, if you would. Thank you, Vicar.
Terribly sorry. Very nearly a nasty one there.
Yes, it was rather.
Reverend. Do you know, I'm just about to call on you. I wonder if I could pick your brains for 5 minutes or so.
Well, yes, of course. I'd just like to do this first.
For goodness sake, woman, tell us what's happened.
It's Mr. Biddle. He's dead. Somebody's murdered him.
So George Biddle's life policy has finally run out. Now, you've seen the 6 suspects so far, but which one had the strongest motive for murder? Did a guilty past turn Mrs. Peacock into a killer? Or did a dark secret provide Miss Scarlet motive for murder? Was the suspicion of arson enough for Mrs. White to kill Biddle? Did Biddle uncover something unsaintly about the Reverend Green? Or did Professor Plum have a better reason? Or did a broken promise prompt Colonel Mustard to murder? Our 6 suspects. Right, well, you've seen 6 suspects, 6 weapons, and 6 rooms. Now, I should tell you that only the murderer can tell lies. Everybody else must tell the truth. The murderer can tell lies and probably will. Pamela and George, make a start. Who do you want to interrogate?
I'd like to put my first question to Mrs. Peacock.
I'm listening.
Are the candles family heirlooms?
Oh, certainly, yes. They're stunning Georgian, pure silver, very heavy, and they've been in the family for a long time. I believe at one point they belonged to the Duke of Norfolk's family.
That'll do for now. Thank you very much.
Okay. Gabby, Frank?
Yes, first question to Colonel Mustard. What did you want to talk to Biddle about?
He'd offered me a seat on the board of his insurance company, and I wanted to see how those plans were progressing.
Thank you.
George and Pamela, one more.
Right, now. Mr. Scarlet.
Why did you put pressure on Colonel Mustard to get rid of him and, presumably the him, or was the him, Mr. Biddle?
Well, it's
personal, obviously.
It's very awkward, yes. Yes, it was Mr. Biddle. That was the him. And I'd really rather not go into it. It really doesn't have anything to do with events that you saw earlier. It's
I don't think I can accept that at all.
No, it might, actually. I think we do deserve a better answer.
Come on, Vivian, spit it out.
I just didn't want the insurance people to go through my things, that's all. And I had something that I was rather worried that they would find out about, and I prefer to keep it quiet. It really doesn't matter now. I'm sorry.
OK, now let's leave it there. Gabby and Frank, one more question.
Well, I'm terribly interested in lovable, homely Mrs. White. I mean, I can't believe Mrs. White, but the lady who's been in service for so long and is a very experienced housekeeper, would not keep the teapot in the kitchen. Now, why did you go scurrying away from the teapot? Where is the teapot? Miles away from the kitchen?
No, I'd collected everything from the dining room and I'd taken it into the kitchen and I'd got the tea all ready and I suddenly realised I hadn't got the teapot. It's always kept in the dining room, the best teapot. The other one, of course, that we use every day, but I wasn't using that. I was using one from the set.
Thank you, Mrs. White.
I went
Thank
through
you, Mrs. White. Pamela and George.
Reverend Green, I'd like to put a question to you.
Yes, hello.
What dealings have you had with the Cosmopolitan Insurance Company in the past?
Ah, yes, well, I thought you might ask me that. I do have a confession to make about that. I did apply for life insurance once through Cosmopolitan, and they did say on the form, have you been recently medically examined? And I said, yes. No, I hadn't.
That's a dastardly thing for a man of the cloth.
Well, for a man of the cloth it is. But I have to come clean now about that. I'm sorry.
Right.
OK. Frank, Gabby, one more.
Yes, to Professor Plum. Now, you're not a member of the family, so why were you so concerned about the insurance people being there?
Well, are you familiar with pre-Columbian art?
Not personally, no, but do tell me.
To enlighten you, there are very small little sort of figurines from South America and Mexico, and they're horrid little things, but they command enormous prices. And I discovered that the mud at Arlington Grange has the same consistency as many of these objects, and I made this machine which actually pressed some of these out, and we managed to sell them. Mrs. Peacock got some of the money as well as I got quite a lot. But unfortunately, one or two of them were stolen, and there was an insurance claim, and I have always felt it prudent ever since then to stay as far away from insurance investigators as possible.
Right, well, now, we've interrogated 6 suspects. I'm not sure whether we're any the wiser or not. Pamela and George.
I think it was done in the study with the candlesticks by the Reverend.
Yes, I will go along with that.
You're very positive. Why do you think that?
Gut instinct.
I
can tell you exactly where it comes from. It's about here.
What did I write down here, Pamela? What did I put down here? I put,
yes.
I don't believe Reverend Green.
Gabby and Frank.
Drawing room.
Drawing room, yeah.
Candlesticks we're still sticking with.
And we're very suspicious about Miss Scarlett because she's very evasive and she clearly wants somebody to do something.
There we are. Yes.
I mean, she was asking one of the characters to do it, and he says, if I'm to do that, you must explain why. I need an explanation. Tell me why. And what is the phrase she uses? If you loved me, you'd get rid of me. Yeah. Right? So she obviously wants to get rid of somebody, and I think in the end she probably did it herself.
Well, I must say you've been working out very, very, very hard. Now, you're saying, after all that, you're saying drawing room, you're saying the candlestick, and you're saying Miss Scarlett. I can tell you that not one single one of those is correct. After all that. I don't know why you're clapping, except it does mean that Miss Scarlett is exonerated. So Miss Scarlett we know is innocent.
I see.
Which is actually more helpful than possibly you might think. And George and Pamela, now, you said study, you said candlesticks, and you said Reverend Green. And I can tell you that one of those is correct. Okay, I don't know how you're doing along there watching at home, but join us again for some more evidence, some more clues on Cluedo in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to the second part of Cluedo. We're trying once again to unravel the mystery of a murder at Arlington Grange. I don't know how you're doing at home, but we're not doing terribly well with our guest detectives. We have worked out, though, by sort of default, really, from Gabby Roslin and Frank Boff's team, that the deed can't have been done in the drawing room. It wasn't done with a candlestick, and it wasn't done by Miss Scarlett. Now, that's all we know so far. We'll get a chance to interrogate these suspects a little more a little later on. But first of all, some fresh evidence has arrived. The details of what happened at Arlington Grange that afternoon. Now, we begin in the library with some bad news for Colonel Mustard.
I'm afraid they're not going to take you on board.
But you told me.
I said I would do whatever I could.
You led me to understand that board approval was just a formality.
I'm sorry, there must have been some misunderstanding there.
It certainly wasn't on my side.
Come, I'm sure I never made any such categorical assurance.
Listen to me, you moron. I know what you said. And if you think you can get away with leading me on like this, you've got another thing coming. I promise you. If you mean what I take you to mean, don't you think I deserve an explanation?
I needed the money. I owed a lot of money, so I did something. He's found out, and if he tells my darling stepmother, she'll write me out of the will.
There's nothing I'd like better than to see the fellow fall under a bus. Although when it actually comes to giving him the push...
If you don't, I will.
Tea will be in the library in 5 minutes.
Right. Thanks.
So that's some fresh evidence. Now, your chance once again to interrogate these 6 suspects, including Miss Scarlett, although we know she's innocent. Gabby Frank.
Well, I want to go with Colonel Mustard because, in fact, he has been seen clearly threatening the victim with a poker in the library, so he must be a prime suspect. I want to come back to your conversation with Miss Scarlett when she said, if I loved you, you'd get rid of him. Who did she mean? Who did she want you to get rid of?
She wanted me to get rid of Biddle because she told me that she had pawned a bronze statue that she'd taken from the grave.
What?
And replaced it with a fake one. Biddle knew about it, and Miss Scarlett was frightened she would tell Mrs. Peacock.
Michael, that was completely unnecessary.
Vivian?
Gabby and Frank, first of all, where was it done? What was the weapon, and who done it?
It was done in the library with a poker by...
You want to say Colonel Mustard?
I do.
Colonel Mustard.
Just tell me why, then.
Well, he was disappointed because he hadn't got on the board. He'd obviously been trying to grease the palm of this man. He quite clearly is a pretty unsavoury character, if you ask me. And his ambition thwarted. He simply had to do something about it. And for some reason, Miss Scarlett also wanted rid of Mr. Biddle. So 2 of them wanted rid of Mr. Biddle. And I believe that Colonel Mustard was the instrument which achieved that end.
Well, you said it was the poker.
With the poker.
Frank, you know you were completely wrong with drawing room candlestick and Miss Scarlett.
And I'm again.
You're completely wrong.
Completely wrong.
Poker and Colonel Mustard.
Didn't I make it sound convincing?
You convinced me. Unfortunately, it's not accurate at all. All 3 of those are wrong. Right, now, Pamela and George, you can return to any of the suspects, including Miss Scarlett. Ask them one question. After that, I must have an immediate deduction of where, what it was done with, and who done it. Right.
Ta-da!
Well, Colonel Mustard.
Yeah?
You said you'd put a lot of work Mr. Biddle's way.
Well, I had, yes.
Why? How'd that come about?
Well, he owned this insurance company,
Yes,
and
I know that.
told a lot of my friends, and a lot of my friends had bought policies with the company, and I expected a seat on the board.
Oh.
He promised me a seat on the board, and he reneged on his promise. Of course, he was only a sergeant.
Where, what, and who done it?
It was done
To study.
in the study
I
with
would say, hang on, with the candlestick.
the candlesticks. Now that's been eliminated
I know,
already.
that's why I'm doing it.
Something very clever you're doing, but if you can share it with us,
the
we'd be jolly
candlestick
grateful.
by Colonel Mustard.
Well, basically, they're all wrong.
You get your way, not mine.
You know who it is now. Hammer Armstrong says we know who it is now. OK, right. Frank Gabby, you can ask a question.
I'm going to pick on the Reverend again. Do you know what Mr. Biddle wanted to talk to you about?
Being a vicar, a lot of people want to talk to me about, you know, spiritual problems. I don't know. But no, he never spoke to me. I regret to say, maybe I could have helped him.
Right, what have you come up with?
Well, we have now, having eliminated Miss Scarlet and Colonel Mustard, check them. We have done that, have we not? Mm-hmm. We think it is the Reverend Green. I hate to say that of a man of the cloth, but his explanation so far has been very unconvincing. He looks exceedingly shifty to me. And I think he may well have done it with the kettle flex in the kitchen.
So you're saying it was done in the kitchen with the kettle flex, and you're saying it was the Reverend Green because he looks shifty. Have you got any slightly more...
Well, he hasn't. He's dodged every question that we've asked him. He was worried.
Dodged?
He was absolutely terrified to talk to him, and he didn't want to talk to him.
Who didn't want to talk?
You didn't want to talk to him. You said, yes, in 5 minutes I'm going to put the tray down. That's...
I was carrying a tray, for God. But you were...
Reverend!
For goodness sake.
Well, Gabby, Frank, I have to tell you, you are absolutely correct. It was done in the kitchen with the kettle flex, and it was the Reverend Green.
I knew I'd been found out. The candlesticks that I'd reported stolen in the burglary had in fact been lent to me by Mrs. Peacock, and I'd returned them months before. After the burglary, some devil got the hold of me, and I included them in the claim. The insurance money came in very handy. I didn't think it was a terribly desperate thing to do, but I knew that if Biddle exposed me, I'd lose my living at the very least, so I followed him back into the kitchen, and I suppose it was the thought of the shame. I have genuinely tried to do God's work, but I just never had the strength. I've never been able to understand quite why God has strength to be good.
So it was the Reverend Green who committed the murder at the Grange with the kettle flex in the kitchen. I'm sorry for the other 5. You innocent ones, you can leave this room. Only the Reverend Green must remain for a very, very, very long time. Hope you got on well with all the various clues tonight at home. Commiserations to Pam and George. Congratulations to the very sprightly Gabby and Frank. Bob! And that's all from us. We'll see you next week for more Murder Mystery at the Grange on Cluedo. Good night. Here